Turn to Matthew chapter, I think it's 16. Boy, isn't that tremendous? We've had the joy of hearing her all week. And we snatch her anytime that we can. I met her when she was 13, when I first visited and preached for Pastor Phil back there. And the first song that I ever heard her do was the Revelation song. And I think we're going to hear that possibly right before we have our round table. We're going to ask her to come up and do that Revelation song. And boy, she's just very moving to me. Matthew chapter 16, if you would. There'll be nothing hard about this message, so you can relax out there. Take your helmet off, your steel-toed shoes. You can take those. You won't need any of that. You needed that last night. Last night was my roughest message of the week from both churches. And I'll be honest with you, those messages are hard for me. I hurt with those kind of messages. I hurt last night, because I don't want to hurt anybody. And everything I said was the truth, but there was some rough stuff in it. And those are not my favorite sermons. And this is my favorite stuff, what we did in Sunday school, what we're going to do here. But what I did last night, probably the most important thing you'll hear all week. So if you can get I think you need about 3 CDs to hear the whole thing, but it's long. But all right, so we're going to jump right into this, and we're right on schedule, Brother Wiles, I believe. So there we go. We're going to get done at 12:15 to 12:30, something like that, and so we'll go through the slides accordingly. But we're going to talk about, are we the final generation? And let me say this real quick too. Miss Megan back there has CDs on the table, and those are hers. I hope that you'll get one of those if you enjoyed her singing. There's, 8 or 10 songs. I don't know how many are on it, but we have them on the table for you back there for her. So we're going to get her to do another one with these new songs she's been doing, and she's just matured so much. She'll be doing another CD in the near future. So I'm figuring she's going to ask me to sing with her on some of them. And but yeah, she's laughing at me, and probably not. So anyway, all right. How many are glad you're here today? How many are hungry? How many can't wait for this to get done? We can go out that door right there. Someone's hands up back there. So hey, I'm with you. So no, we're going to have a good time. You're going to enjoy this lesson. There's nothing in here that you got to be concerned that you got to hide behind a wall or anything. I want to get you to see, if I can, where we are on the timeline of the history of the world. I think we're right at the end of it. I think the Lord's coming back soon. Amen. And I sure hope that He is. Yes. As the songwriter, as she's just saying about the clouds being rolled back. And man, just imagine what's getting ready to happen. At the end of the service for the invitation, Megan's going to come back. She's going to sing our theme song, I Wish You'd All Been Ready. She's going to sing that when I get done, and I'm going to give you my little 3-point what you need to be rapture ready. And by the way, these tracks are on the back table. I'd like you to get one if you don't have one. I wrote the track. It's also the final chapter in most of my books. Time is running out. I wrote that. 3 things you need to be rapture ready, and I'll share them with you at the end during the invitation. So, all right, is everybody ready? How many were here for Sunday school, the barley harvest stuff? How many learned something there? I'll tell you what, that's amazing stuff. We didn't quite get through, but I think you got the gist of it. So there's DVDs on the back table, my 2 Cross Unsealed series. There's two volumes. There's 4 PowerPoint presentations on each one. What I did this morning is on one of those. And I think this one is on as well. This one is on one of those back there. But I never do them the same twice. You'll figure that out if you get to know me. These 2 ladies have been to several of our meetings, and they'll tell you they've heard some of these before, I imagine, and they never come out the same twice. So that's just the way it is. That's good, I guess. But all right, if you got a Bible, I'll put the verse up for you in a minute here, but it's in Matthew chapter 16. Verse 2 and 3 is our text we're going to start with. He answered and said unto them, When it is evening, ye say it will be fair weather. for the sky is red. This is Jesus talking. And in the morning it will be foul weather today, for the sky is red and lowering. How many sailors we got here, ex-sailors, besides me? Any? No sailors here? Just just Marines and Army and Special Forces, and we always cut up in the Navy. We could whoop one Navy guy could whoop 3 Marines, but we knew it wasn't true. We could only whoop 2 of them. So we knew them guys was tough. Brother Phil back there is once a Marine, always a Marine. You just look at him and you know he's a Marine. But this is a saying from that the Navy kind of picked up, didn't it? Ever heard the saying, red sky at night, sailor delight? Red sky in the morning, sailor take warning? Right out of the Bible. Now, not everything sailors say is out of the Bible, but that one is. So, in other words, you can look at the sky at night, red sky at night, sailor delight. It's going to be a nice day tomorrow. Red sky at night, sailor take warning. Or red sky in the morning, sailor take warning. That's a sign that possibly bad weather is coming. And Jesus used this. And then we'll look what he says. O ye hypocrites. O ye hypocrites, you can discern the face of the sky, but can ye not discern the signs of the times? Now, he's not talking about the rapture here. He's not talking about the second coming here. He's talking about the fact that his first coming, here he is on the scene and they missed it. Nobody saw it. Nobody realized he was here. He's going to ride, a little while he's going to ride in on the donkey and present himself as the Messiah. And everybody missed it. And they don't believe that he's the Messiah. They don't believe it's the time. The Bible talks about the day of your visitation. They missed the day that was the day of visitation, in my opinion, was him riding down the hill. It's exactly what Daniel 9 was prophesying. In the 69th week, Messiah would be cut off. That's that exact event right there, Palm Sunday and Passover, the 4-day event there. So the passage is not about the rapture. However, it does shed light on the fact that the Lord expects us to know the season. He rebuked them, called them hypocrites for being able to tell the weather tomorrow, but they didn't understand the signs to see that Messiah was on the way. Now, I think even though he's not talking about the second coming here, I think the principle applies. You and I ought to be able to know that the time is near for our Lord's return. We cannot know the exact moment. We can't know the exact hour, the day. I don't think we can figure out the month. If you were here for the barley harvest, you realize only God knows when the reset button's hit. Nobody else will know. I believe when he hits the reset button, the rapture will happen 7 months later, right to the day. I believe because on that last day of the month of Adar, there's 14 days left. That's the new moon. The next day, that evening's the new moon. Exactly 7 months later is the Feast of Trumpets in the fall. And I believe when God sees Israel is ready, hits the button, 7 months later, we're out of here. Now, we're not going to know. Maybe that button's already been hit. Maybe we're already in that 7-month period, and we're out of here pretty soon. That'd be okay with me. And I hope that's okay with you. But God wants us to not know necessarily the exact moment. It's imminent. But the Lord expects, I believe the Lord expects us to look around and see what's going on and realize it's almost time for us to go home. So let's go into it. I want to give you some reasons why I believe we are that final generation upon the earth. We don't know exactly what month or year or day that He's coming. I have some suspicions, but nobody's going to figure this out. You've got to be very careful about being dogmatic. You got to be very careful when you uncover something you think you got it figured out. Because in my book back there, the 7 Clocks a Ticking, I have a quote in there that I gave. Think about it. For the last 2,000 years, everybody who set a date for the rapture has been wrong. Every one of them. So look, quit trying to set dates. You're not gonna get it. So, but realize it's more important to know that we're in the season, and to be looking for Him. All right. So I got some reasons I want to give you, and I think we'll be able to get through all of these. But I got some reasons. The first reason is in 1 Timothy chapter 3. You don't have to turn there, but you can if you want. Chapter 3, verses 1 through 5, and I've got it up on the screen there. And perilous signs given in 2 Timothy chapter 3, verses 1 through 5. This know also in the last days, perilous times shall come. Notice the wording there. If you know your English and your tenses, verb tenses and whatnot, shall come is future, right? This is Paul living in the last days, because the Bible says in Hebrews the last days started with Christ. So we're in the last days for 2,000 years, but there's something about the last of the last days. So Paul's not talking about just the 2,000-year last days. Paul is talking about the last of the last days before the Lord comes back. And he says, no, also in the last days, perilous times shall come. No, that word perilous comes from the root word peril. You thought I was going to say from the Greek word. If you were here last night, you'll know you're not going to hear that from me. You don't need to know Greek to know your Bible. In fact, some of that Greek will confuse you on what the Bible means. The Bible defines itself. And in Webster's 1828 dictionary, the greatest dictionary ever written, I would suggest you get an 1828 dictionary. I have it on my phone. It's free. You can get the dictionary on your phone or your computer. And he defines Bible words for you, and he help you with that. So the word perilous comes from the word peril, which means what? Danger. Your life is in peril, danger, right? I'm thinking of Will Robinson in Lost in Space. Danger, danger. How many are old enough to remember that? Will Robinson and all that. All right. A whole bunch of you haven't lived yet if you haven't seen Lost in Space. And talk about old. I mean, looked like an old barrel, funny looking robot. I mean, not like the Star Wars guys and all that. So, in the last days, dangerous, perilous times shall come. And then he says, why? Because men shall be lovers of their own selves. That's dangerous. When men are lovers of their own selves, that's a dangerous time. Covetous, boasters. What I'm saying is these things are what Paul says is going to, the last days is going to be like. And I think if you'll look at this, I think you'll find us here. Lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters. Hey, people got bumper stickers on their cars now. The guy with the most toys wins. That's our generation. Boasters, proud, blasphemers. By the way, blasphemy is bringing God down to our level. That's all it is. It's making God almost human. It's making us on the same level as God. That's blasphemy. And you ever hear people talk, the man upstairs, he's not the man upstairs, he's God. And see, the man upstairs kind of brings him down, doesn't it? Kind of brings him down to humanity's level. The man upstairs is someone just like me. Well, I guarantee he's not like us. And he's God. And it's a fearful thing to fall into the hands of the living God. And so, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy. And then look what he says in verse 3 here, without natural affection. I've underlined it for you there. Two things come to my mind when I read that verse, and I bet the same two things come to your mind. Homosexuality, sodomy, the Bible calls it. There's nothing natural about that. Nothing natural about that. It's wicked, it's vile, it's anti-God, it's anti-scriptures, and I don't care if the government legalizes it and makes laws and tries to force it down our throats. It is ungodly, it is wicked, it is vile, it is unnatural. And second thing comes to mind is, of course, abortion. And the abortion industry and the killing of our unborn little babies in the womb, selling body parts on the open market. That's all been proven. It was filmed. Some federal judge said it was illegal to film it, so they threw it out. So it's still going on. Right here in good old USA, God bless America. Right? Without natural affection, truce breakers, false accusers, incontinent, fierce, despisers of those that are good, traitors, heady, high-minded, lovers of pleasures more than lovers of God, having a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof. From such turn away. So that's us, I think. I think we fit that pretty well. So 2 Timothy chapter 3 is one of the few places in the Bible that gives some pretty pertinent signs of what it will be like before Christ comes back. And I think we can see ourselves there. There's another reason, though. I believe another reason in the book of Daniel, chapter 12, is the increase of travel. Daniel chapter 12 is pretty interesting. Very prophetic book, by the way. Anybody that's ever gone to Bible college or you do a Revelation class somewhere, it's almost never a Revelation class. It's a Daniel and Revelation class because the two books go together. You'll never understand the end times without understanding Daniel chapter 9, the 70 weeks of Daniel. And there's other places as well, Daniel 12 and other things. But there's, of course, the kingdoms of the world are spoken about, Daniel chapter 2, Daniel chapter 7, talking about the 4 world kingdoms that will take place. And that last world kingdom will evolve into the Antichrist kingdom, the revived Roman Empire, some people call it. And so Daniel's a very important prophetic book to tie in with Revelation when you're studying the book of Revelation. My Revelation study guide on the book table back there starts with Daniel 9. And I give a good study of that, and then we jump into chapter by chapter of the Revelation. But look what Daniel says. But thou, O Daniel, shut up the words. Now this is right after Daniel just said, look, Lord, I don't understand. What does this mean? You just showed this to me, but I don't understand it. And he said, it's not for you, Daniel. It's for the last generation. Look what he says here. But thou, O Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book, even to the time of the end. Now, did you catch that? To the time of the end. He didn't say until after the end. Or he didn't say until I come on the white horse and I end it all. What good would that do? He said till the time of the end. I believe that's the last generation he's talking to. I believe that's you and me. And look what he says. Daniel, shut up the words. In other words, just close the book. This is for somebody down the road. This is for the last generation. Seal the book, he said, even to the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. I believe there's a little sign here that God is saying that last generation that comes on the scene that I wrote this for, and this vision was for, is going to be the generation that's running to and fro. That's the traveling generation. Did you know your grandfathers and grandmothers very seldom went anywhere back in the day? You go back to the early 1900s, 1800s. My goodness, you had a farm. I got a farmer up here. We used him for Sunday school this morning. When you got a farm, you can't just pack your bag and go on a vacation. Somebody's got to milk them cows. Somebody's got to take care of the fields and the livestock. Somebody's got to pick the eggs out in the chicken coop. And you just couldn't take off. And now it's different today. We have our jobs and we punch in and you get vacations and you just take off. This is the running to and fro generation. But the prior generations knew nothing of that. Back in the olden days, people seldom went more than 40 or 50 miles from their house ever. There was nowhere to go. Their life revolved around their family farm and their business and of course before cars and trains and planes and all that. How would you go very far anyway? And boy, how things have changed. We're the running to and fro generation today. And many shall run to and fro. I think that's a sign of the last generation. Let me dwell on that for a little bit here. Look at all these people here. I don't know what this picture represents. I don't know. It could be the Exodus. It could be Moses and them leaving Egypt. That's very possible that that's what it is. But it may be, it may not. But what I want you to see here is that, get this, for 5,800 years of human history, I'm talking about from Adam to somewhere around the 1800s, if you went anywhere, this is how you went. Have you ever stopped to think about that? I'm talking, we're close to the 6,000th year, right? For 5,800 years of the 6,000 years, this is how you traveled. If you were going to move, you got a camel, you got horses and wagon. I mean, this is how you went. Do you realize what's changed in our generation? We don't even think about it now. But realize, for most of the world, 5,800 years of the 6,000 years, this is how you got around. Boy, that ought to sink into your head. And listen, we're the final generation. We're the running to and fro generation. These guys didn't run to and fro. It's too painful. Too painful on your knees and carrying stuff and packing the camels and you need water and you need food and there's no Walmart, there's no McDonald's, there's no fast food. It's work and labor. It took them 3 days to get to the Red Sea. 3 days. And they had to bring their food. They carried food and water and you name it. And man, it was quite an ordeal to travel. So they're there 5,800 years. And of course, we evolved into horses and over here and wagons and Wagon trains, that's obviously a more modern picture. You can see the flag there, but it fits the description anyway. The Western days, 1800s here in America, you had that's how you traveled out west. You got on a wagon train, and it might take you 6 months to get across to the western states, where you're going to, many times they would go part way and they would stay the winter somewhere, and then they'd go the rest of the way in the spring, and many people died on these wagon trains. Children were born, disease, plagues, you name it. You've seen some of the documentaries and some of the movies, and I realize some of the movies maybe exaggerate some, but really it's probably worse than the movies. The movies don't show you everything. The movies don't show what it's like using the restroom out west on a wagon train. You know, nobody ever uses the restroom in the movies, do they? I mean, it's almost like it doesn't. But think about it. Think about the hardships of travel. Think of how rough that wagon is, sitting in that wagon. I mean, no springs, no shocks, no cushions, and every night you got to unhitch the horses. You got to take care of them. You got to pat them down. You got to tie them up. And there's weather. There's this. There's mosquitoes. There's spiders. There's snakes. There's rocks and stuff. You got to move rock. What an ordeal it was to travel. They say 7 or 8 miles was a good day for a wagon train. My goodness, we can do that in 5 minutes. We're the running to and fro generation today. The year 1850, everything changed. The Industrial Revolution began. Here's the steam locomotive. They called it the what? The iron horse. This was now the new mode of travel. The stagecoach would begin to slow down as trains became more prevalent. Much better to get on a train and go to Denver than to ride a stagecoach. And them horses can only run so far. So many of the Indians didn't use horses. I know the Westerns all have them use. The Indians said they could be much more quiet walking. A horse makes noise. And a horse needs to rest every few miles or you'll kill him. Them Indians, they just go. And so the Westerns get some of that stuff wrong, I think, about the Indians and whatnot. But you got them out there with no clothes on, in the wintertime. Come on, they're not that stupid, right? Western, Hollywood. So the steam locomotive. Here's something interesting about this. This is somewhere around the year 1850. So we've come a long way now. Now we're at the year 5,850 years from Adam. Suddenly, for the first time in 5,850 years, what happened? Man could now travel faster than Cain or Abel or Adam could go. For the first time in 5,850 years, a man could travel faster than a horse. And a horse sometimes could try to keep up, but he couldn't. But he certainly couldn't go for as long as the train. The train could go for hours. And the horse will drop dead in a few minutes if you run him at full speed. And the iron horse, for the first time in history, a man could travel faster than Adam could travel, or Cain, or anybody in history. Because we could now travel. You could only go as fast as a horse could take you. I don't believe there was any animal that you could ride faster than a horse. And then this came along. So you see the change here? And not only speed, but the Industrial Revolution. Now they're going to make machinery. Now they're going to start mass producing things. And everything begins to change here. So, all right. And then let's look at some more travel. Hey, anybody ever done one of those? Can you imagine understanding this in the year 1850? Who could have understood that? An airplane. And you and I understand it. See, men run to and fro today. We can go anywhere in the world on that thing. And hey, look at that thing. Anybody remember that? I grew up with that as a young boy. Star Trek. I know the author of that. I know he was an atheist. I understand all that. Way beyond their time with those shows. Some of that stuff's come to pass in our generation. Now, it was just sci-fi back then. But I'm telling you, some of that stuff is out there now. The lasers and stuff like that. I believe we've got some of that now. I don't know if we got that transporter room yet, but I don't know if we're going to achieve that or not. But and the phasers they use and all. I'm telling you, there was quite they were way ahead of their time when Star Trek came out. Some of that was more realistic than Star Wars, I thought. The early Star Wars, I thought some of that was kind of strange, but Star Trek seemed like it was way beyond everybody in the early 70s. So, but that travel. Now, there's a third reason I believe we're the final generation, and that is the same verse goes on to talk about knowledge shall be increased. Knowledge shall be increased. Do you realize the knowledge that we have at our fingertips today? I mean, I don't care what, if you've got a question, you can ask Google, and Google will have some answer for you. The knowledge is at our fingertips. Abraham Lincoln, it was said, would read by candlelight. He'd get whatever books he could get his hand on, and he'd have a candle, and he'd read by candlelight. We've got the knowledge of the world at our fingertips. You don't even have to go to the library. Who goes to libraries anymore? But there it is. Knowledge shall be. Daniel shut up the word, sealed the book. Daniel said, Lord, I don't understand what this means. You just give me this vision. What does this mean? The Lord said, don't worry about it, Daniel. It's not for you. Shut up the book, seal the book. Many are going to run to it. It's for the final generation to understand. And that final generation is the one that's the running to and fro generation. How long do people last at their house these days? People move all the time. That didn't happen years ago. People don't stay at their residence. They move all the time and run to and fro. Knowledge shall be increased. We're in that age of knowledge. Look at this. This is in years gone by, you couldn't have afforded to have that. That was very expensive stuff. This is handwritten. This could be a copy of the Scriptures. Nobody had the Scriptures back in the early days. There was no printing press till the 1400s. So everything that was in print was handwritten by somebody. And just amazing. The printing press comes along, I think it was 1450 or something like that, the Gutenberg press. And that was very expensive. I mean, you didn't just go say, hey, can you run off a couple of copies for me for Sunday school? No, you didn't do that. That was the king's printing press. And they were called Barker, printers to the king. You'll see that in the old King James Bible on the cover sheet, printed by Barker and Sons, I think, printers for the king. And I mean, you didn't just go have your recipes printed out by the printing company there in them early days. Of course, King James was 1600s, I realize, but printing, if you had it, was expensive. But before 1450, it was all handwritten on papyrus, or back in Moses' day, animal skins and things like that. And that didn't last very long. It would turn to dust after a while, and you'd have to copy it over into something else. So many couldn't read in the early days. In fact, the Catholic Church kept the Bible out of the English language for centuries. It was against the law to print the Bible in English in the 1500s. Tyndale came along, put the Bible in English. He made that famous statement to the bishop. He said, I'll make it so the boy driving the plow, there's my farmer, I'll make it so the boy driving the plow will know more of the Scriptures than you do. And he did. He put the Bible in English and was burned at the stake for it later. But I'm just showing you the lack of reading and knowledge back all the way even to the 1500s and 1600s. The wealthy, a lot of the poor didn't read. A lot of them didn't write. And things have sure changed, haven't they, in our days. So here's how you could communicate back in the day. No cell phones. You teenagers, you would pass out. You wouldn't know what to do with your life. There was no cell phones. There was no rotary phones that I grew up with. The rotary phone, remember that? There was no nothing. This is how these guys learned how to communicate. Hey, Chief Watamaga, we having dinner tomorrow noontime. You come. Bring your tribe. Bring your papoose and all that. And you laugh at that, but it's a long way down the valley and up the mountain to the other guy. It could take a whole day to get over there. And we're having dinner tomorrow. Chief wants you to come. You better leave right now. Oh, no, we've got plans. Oh, man, can I stay and eat with you guys? And there was a way to communicate. War signals, maybe wedding. Hey, my daughter get married. You come. Bring gifts. Bring food. And, I'm joking a little bit, but way to communicate. This was state of the art right here. That's pretty big, you know what? Communicating somehow with making signs in the smoke somehow. Not so good at night. So, remember back in the early days, remember the cell phones? Remember there were certain times of the day you could talk and not cost too much? Remember that? Hey, they had worse problems. They couldn't talk at night at all. You couldn't see it. Couldn't see the smoke, right? And we think we got it bad. Then later on, this thing comes along, telegraph. And so communication is changing, isn't it, over the years? And the telegraph is invented. In fact, it existed during the Civil War. They had the telegraph. You've all seen the movies. They go up and they cut the line. And in Western days, cut the line, cut the communication. And they'd have to come find it and fix it. And so, but the telegraph, what an invention. Now, you could get a telegram from somebody 1,000 miles away. And my daughter get married 2 weeks from now. We want, a telegram. Or so-and-so has died. When you get the message by telegraph. It took weeks to get stuff in the mail. Your loved one might have died weeks ago, and you don't even know till the letter comes in the mail. Telegraph changed all that. Knowledge shall be increased, and the ability of transferring knowledge is increased. And so see the progression here and how things have changed over the years. And books, only the rich had books. You didn't have books. You borrowed them. You begged for them. You didn't have books. They were expensive. The rich people had books and libraries, and so that's one of the things that created the two classes of people. The wealthy had the things at their fingertips. They had the ability to pay for college and universities, and the poor were the poor. And you didn't have what they had, so you didn't have the access to get educated. That's not true anymore. By the way, you don't need Zondervan to get your book out anymore. You can get on the internet, get a Facebook page, get social media, get on Amazon. You can write a book today. You don't need anybody to publish it. None of my books have been published by anybody. It's all done by us, and the bookstores won't touch us. So it's a racket. I'll tell you that right now. So you got to somehow get into their computer system, and it costs a bunch of money. It's just nothing but a big racket. So more and more people are just bypassing all that mess, and we're out on our own. Pretty soon Zondervan will be gone. And, maybe they should open their door a little and let some of us in. We'd use them if they'd let us, but we're going around them because knowledge has increased. Things have changed. Technology. So you got that. You got, look at them things. Computer comes along. Those are computers in the early days, and the great big reel-to-reel things in there. That was a pretty big deal back then. And you would laugh at that today. Mainframe computers, and took a lot of power to run these, a lot of electricity, and very little memory. This thing comes along, we laugh at that too, but that's not that far away. My mother worked at a mill, and this is what she started on, this kind of stuff. Anybody ever heard of a floppy disk? Yeah, a lot of you have, but none of you young people know what a floppy disk is. What's a floppy disk? That's something that goes on is that like a dog? Dog ears? And the floppy disk. Your computer don't even come with the floppy drive anymore. The CD, some of the computers, a lot of them aren't coming with CD trays anymore. Remember the coffee tray? You open up, put your coffee cup there? The CD tray? A lot of them don't have that. I'll tell you what, the stores, the DVDs, if the Lord tarries, it won't be long. Those DVDs are on the way out. Everything's now becoming digital. And look, and you got to move with it. Authors got to move with it. I got to realize one day people aren't going to buy paper books anymore. In fact, 30%, they say, of all book readers never buy paper books. They buy Kindle readers, and they read them on a computer. And they can put all their books in their library on their devices now, and nobody needs paper. So if you don't put your book on that, you'll miss a lot of people who won't never see your book. But things are progressing. There's the laptop. I got one right here, a Mac that I use, and this is modern stuff. It's changed the world. It's changed the knowledge and the way that we get knowledge and how we communicate and all that. There's another reason I believe we're the final generation. Let me look at my clock here. Okay, we're doing good. We've got plenty of time. Another reason I believe we're the final generation is for the first time in history, one man can effectively rule the whole world. And that one man, is the Antichrist, who's going to take power after the rapture. He's going to come on the scene. Revelation chapter 6, verses 1 through 3. This man comes on a white horse. Why a white horse? Because he's the counterfeiter of the real thing, Jesus Christ. Christ is coming on a white horse in Revelation 19. This guy comes on a white horse. Now I believe it's symbolic. So he comes on a white horse. A crown is placed on his head. He's going to have answers to man's problems. And believe me, at the rapture, there's going to be problems. And they're going to be begging for somebody to save the world. I don't have time to get in it, but I have a scenario that I think fits. It may not be right, but I think Ezekiel 38 and 39 happens right there. I think the rapture happens at the same time. I think America saves Israel somehow with some new weapon that we don't even know about. And I think out of that, the man who saves Israel, saves the world, will be crowned as the head of the world, the Antichrist, Revelation chapter 6, verses 1 through 3. I saw and behold a white horse. He that sat on him had a bow, and a crown was given unto him, and he went forth conquering and to conquer. And then you'll see the 4 horsemen there, and 1/4 of the world dies, and then first 4 seals alone. Some of you, your parents that are not saved, your children, your brother, your sister, your child who is not born again, if they're left behind, they will live through those first 4 seals. And it's going to be war, it's going to be disease, it's going to be starvation, it's going to be animals killing people because animals need to eat too. It's going to be a bad, bad time. That's just the beginning of sorrows. And the first half is nothing compared to the second half if you live that long. So you don't want to be here for that. And there's only one way to escape that, and that's to be born again. So we got that. How does he rule the world? Computers. Satellite. See, it was never possible before. George Washington could not have understood how one man could rule the world. How could you comprehend that in the 1700s? George Washington couldn't see the computer age and the cell phones. And George Washington, when he read that verse, and every eye shall see him, how could every eye see him? I mean, you can only see, as far as you can see from a mountaintop. I mean, how does every eye see him? We can understand that perfectly. The 2 witnesses that are left dead up on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, the 2 witnesses, Moses, Elijah, the Bible says the whole world rejoices when they're dead. How does the whole world know they're dead? How long does it take to get a telegram in the mail? How long does it take to mail a letter? No, we don't need that. It's live. Everything's live now. And even Fox, and I think Fox is the best of all of them, but they got their problems too. They got Shepard Smith after all. I got big problems with him and some of the others, but everything's live now. And by the way, every 5 minutes, this is a Fox News alert. Oh my goodness, what's going on? And it's some stupid thing. Fox News alerts every 10 minutes. I mean, it used to be that was only for a serious emergency going on, and everything's because everything's got to be something big now to get people's attention, to keep people watching. And they have beauty queens. All the people on the news are beauty queens. I mean, they're just like gorgeous models, and that's it's to bring the viewers in. I mean, So one man can effectively rule the world today. That was never possible until our generation. Never. Not in the 50s, not in the 40s, not in the 30s, not in the 60s. It's today via satellite, cell phones, computers. This age that we live in, one man could sit on Air Force One and rule the world. It kind of is already, by the way. You don't believe that, but the United Nations, last time I checked, was in Manhattan, New York City. By the way, there's only 2 Babylons in the whole world. Did you know that? Go on to Google Earth sometime, type in Babylon, you'll be shocked. There's only 2 in the whole planet. One of them is a desert over there in Iraq with a bunch of rubble. The other one's in New York City, in Long Island, Babylon. I got a picture of it. Babylon, New York. Better think on that a while. Let's see. We've got cell phones. Another reason, I believe we're the last generation. We're it, because for the first time in history, man has the power to destroy himself. That was never possible before. It was never possible even 50 years ago. It was not possible for man to destroy himself. It is possible today. And we got a verse here, I think, Mark 13:20. Except the Lord had shortened those days, no flesh should be saved. But for the elect's sake, whom he had chosen, he has shortened the days. We're going to talk about that in the round table a little bit, so we won't get into that now. That's an interesting thought right there, and I want to share some things in the round table with you about that. A couple ladies here asked me that a few weeks ago. I said, look, we're going to deal with that right here. So, but what you get out of this is the fact that if God has to intervene or the world would destroy itself, then the world has to have the ability to destroy itself. And for it to be the end times, that ability's got to be here. Guess what? It's here. Now, we didn't do it at this church. I think we did it at Brother McMillan's church. I did the, did I? I don't think I did it. I did the nuclear ticking clock. I talked about the atomic age. It started in 1945. We did a whole session on that, about the progression of nuclear warfare. We started with Cain killing his brother with a rock or a stick, and we went all the way through history to the atomic age where everything changed. Right in there, just about where Israel becomes a nation again, everything changed. Listen, this last 70 years, everything has changed. And we're the generation that can see all these things happening, clear as day. So, I mean, look at this. Here's an ICBM or something. By the way, an ICBM is the delivery mechanism, not the bomb. You can put any bomb you want in that. That's the missile that shoots and can go 1,000 miles and land in somebody's backyard, right? Like Washington, D.C.'s backyard. Good place for it, by the way. And sometimes you wish the whole thing would blow up. A bunch of rats in there. And ever heard of the inside the Beltway? That's a different country in there than we live in. And so this is a portable one where they can hide it somewhere. They can drive somewhere and hide it. They don't need that truck to get the missile somewhere. They need that truck to hide the missile and to hide it in the woods or drive it somewhere so they don't get blown up by the other guy. But that thing is some sort of you can put a nuclear device on that. But in George Washington's day, here's what he had, and this is a cap and ball. He had a flintlock, which is even worse. Shoots one ball. You're probably lucky if you can be accurate at 100 yards. When you fired, you didn't know if you hit anything because the smoke, the black powder back then, and the Civil War as well. When they would fire a volley of rounds, the smoke was so bad you didn't know if you hit anything, and I mean, just unbelievable. So this, and here's a picture of that. Here's some British soldiers, I guess, firing, and see the smoke there. You hope you hit something, and then what a terrible way to fight, by the way. Stand in a line, and they're on the line over there. They fire, you kneel down and load, and then they fire, and a bunch of your guys fall over dead. And then, what a crazy way to fight. And of course, the Americans, in the Revolutionary, we hid behind trees. The British stood in big lines like that, and one reason we had an advantage, so to speak, there. But imagine George Washington reading that passage, except the Lord intervened, there'd be no flesh saved. And he looks at his flintlock rifle, and he wonders, how does George Washington understand that passage? He doesn't. He can't see it. You and I can see it. We can see it clear as day. We can see that things have changed. It is said that one nuclear submarine today, and we have many of them, one nuclear submarine today has more firepower than all the bombs dropped during World War II by Japan, America, and Great Britain, and Germany. One nuclear submarine has more firepower than every bomb dropped during World War II. You think about that for a minute. One submarine out in the Pacific Ocean or Atlantic Ocean somewhere. Things have changed, haven't they? We're in the nuclear age. And my goodness, in 1952, they created the hydrogen bomb, 1,000 times more powerful than the bomb dropped on Japan just 7 years earlier. 1952, the hydrogen nuclear bomb, 1,000 times worse than the atom bomb. Now that was 68 years ago. Do you suppose we've come a little further than that? Or do you suppose we've come a lot further than that? Yeah, you better believe it. Another reason, quickly, I believe we're it. Christ is coming in our generation. I don't know if I guess I got to press the button again. There it is. The description of the lukewarm church. And we talked about that last night. We won't get into this again, but the lukewarm church, the Laodicean church in Revelation 3, I believe, pictures the church as it exists right before Christ comes back. You turn the page after that last church, you get to Revelation 4, verse 1, a door or a portal. A portal is open in heaven, a door, and a voice is heard as the sound of a trumpet, and John is told, come up hither, the rapture. Right after this lukewarm church, and I believe that fits our world today, is a lukewarm church, a church that when you go to it, you can't even tell it's different from a nightclub. I told the story last night of a church that I was at. They turned the lights off and turned on the band and the music, and it was like a rock concert. It was unbelievable. And we've lost our identity. We don't even identify as a church anymore. And hey, we're doing good. We're almost done. So here's another reason. And here's the verse. That thing is going to change. Here we go. Here's the verse, but we're not going to we talked about this last night. The lukewarm, because thou art lukewarm, neither cold nor hot, I'll spew thee out of my mouth. Listen, warm water is good for something. Cold water is good for something. Lukewarm water makes you throw up. The doctors used to give children lukewarm water to get them to puke, right? And that's good to talk about right before we go eat, right? So, and then he says, because you say you're rich, increase with goods, have need of nothing, and knowest not thou art wretched, blind, poor, miserable, naked. And, God's description of us today. That's God's people today. The air conditioner quits working, and we think the mark of the beast has started. We complain, we get mad. Most of the world has never heard of an air conditioner. And we get upset over little things like that. There's another one here real quickly. We're coming up on the 6,000th year of human history. Hey, I think that's pretty important. Because I am a believer in the 6,000-year earth. I believe from Adam, creation, to the beginning of the kingdom age, the millennium, I believe it's 6,000 years. Right to, not just to the month or the year or the day, I believe right to the second. And I've got that all figured out. I have a thing in my book back there about Stephen. I think he's a key. I think Stephen died on the Feast of Trumpets, right at the sounding of Feast of Trumpets at 6 p.m. I believe that's where the old ended and the church age began as far as the clocks are concerned. I believe the 4,000 years will be there in the 2,000-year church age and then the kingdom age. Now, I believe we're very close to the end of that 6,000th year. I know what you're thinking. You're looking at your wife or you're... This is 2018. We're already at the year 6018. No, we're not. No, we're not, because we started the calendar at the wrong place. If you remember Sunday school, remember the Gregorian calendar is not right. We started the church in the New Testament at the birth of Christ, and it doesn't start there. It starts at the death of Christ. Hebrews 9 is very clear about that. And so we don't know what year this is. There's no way to know. Look, we don't know in the last 2,000 years who's messed with the calendar. Who knows? Remember, in the year 1400, there's no communication. Who's keeping up with the calendar? Do you really think it's that accurate and with no technical devices, no communication? So what's been messed with in the last 2,000 years? Nobody knows. And by the way, our calendar was devised later, and they went back and tried to figure out where it started. So you don't know if, we say this is 2019. Did I say 18? This is 19. We don't know where we're at. They're guessing. Jesus was born in 4 BC. Really? They got that figured out like that? Really? Genesis 1, 4004 BC. Does that sound like God to you? An uneven number like that? Nah. No, I don't believe it. I believe the Old Testament will be 4,000 years to the day, to the second. And I believe the church age, and I believe we're coming up at the end of this 6,000-year period. Here's a little chart, real simple for you. 4,000 years in the Old Testament, from Adam, from Genesis 1, all the way to the end of the Old Testament, which, by the way, you have to include Daniel's 70th week, which hasn't happened yet. But I don't want to confuse you with that right now. But basically, I believe the Old Testament is at 3993 right now. I believe the 7 years missing in the Old Testament. The church age will finish off 2,000 years, and the clock will stop, and we'll go back to finish off that final 7-year period called Daniel's 70th week. And it'll finish it off, and then Christ comes back on the white horse, and the 1,000-year kingdom begins. And Christ will rule with a rod of iron from Jerusalem, the holy city, and that's going to be an interesting time for 1,000 years. All right, and I think there's another one here, and I think this is the last one. It is, because there's only one more slide left, so that's good. The budding of the fig tree. I believe Israel is the greatest sign of the end time of all signs. You and I do not realize, because we were born a little late. Anybody here older than like 70, 75? Is there? Nobody wants to say. Anybody that old here? Some of you old-timers can remember the birth of Israel, 1948. It's a long time ago now, right? 71 years old? So if you're 71, you were a baby and you don't remember it, right? But anyone over their 80s or 90 might have some recollection of this. The budding of the fig tree. Here's what I believe. I believe, according to Matthew 24, the generation that sees the fig tree bud, this generation not pass. I personally believe the fig tree took root in 1948. I believe the fig tree budded in 1967. Look, a fig tree's got to be planted and grow before it can bud. I believe in 1948 it was planted, it took root with the decision of the United Nations to give the property to Israel, 1940, after the war. May 15th, I think it was. I believe that's the growing, the planting of the roots of the fig tree. I believe 1967, when they got Jerusalem in the Six-Day War, I believe that's where the fig tree budded. And that's my opinion. I'm not saying you have to agree with my opinion, but that's my opinion on it. And that puts us at 50 years now from the budding of the fig tree. And that's an interesting number too. But so the budding of the fig tree, and here's a verse, Matthew 24. Now learn a parable of the fig tree. When his branch is yet tender, put forth leaves. You know that summer is nigh. And the verse goes on. I don't think I have the rest of it here, but the generation that sees this shall not pass. The Bible says, a lot of people think that means that whatever generation sees that happen will not die before the end time comes and the Lord comes back. Again, he's talking about the second coming, Christ coming to set up the kingdom. Nobody saw the rapture until Paul. Now that'll mess up your head. We've all been wrong on this. The rapture is a mystery. Paul declared, behold, I show you a mystery. We shall not all sleep, but we shall all be changed in a moment, twinkling an eye. Paul was given the understanding of the rapture. Nobody else was given that. That means everything before Paul does not talk about the rapture. There's no rapture talked about in Matthew 24. Jesus didn't talk about the rapture. Nobody in the Old Testament talked about the rapture. There are figures and types and pictures you can see, but nobody understood the rapture until Paul, the apostle, gives the understanding to the church about the rapture. Now, that's a whole another. That's on one of the DVDs back there, by the way. So it is kind of interesting. All those verses we always quote. Well, no man knows the day and the hour. We don't know when the rapture. That may be true, but that's not what that verse is talking about. Those verses are not talking about the rapture. They're talking about his second coming. Nobody knows the day or the hour of his coming on that white horse. And nobody also, obviously, if you don't know that, you can't know when he's coming secretly in the clouds either. I'm just pointing out those verses we all use are taken out of context. They're not talking about the rapture. They're talking about his second coming. So that was extra. That's not in the notes here. And no extra charge for that. So I believe that it's all about Israel. I believe they're the most important sign. And I say this all the time. M.R. DeHaan, one of my favorite Bible teachers of the day gone by, his book's all written like 1947. He's got his Revelation book, Daniel, and some other books. 1947, 1 year before Israel becomes a nation. In his book, and I laugh about it, in his book he says one day man will go to the moon. Now he was, he believed that. And he also said one day man will go faster than the speed of sound, 600 and something miles an hour. That's nothing today. But he saw it coming, 1947. And then he said one day Israel will be back in their land. He was a year ahead of it, but he saw it. He knew it would happen. How did he know? He believed his Bible. Way back in the book of Ezekiel, Son of man, can these bones live again? Remember the bones? And they get up and they dance around or whatever. That was a prophecy about the rebirth of Israel in the end times. We believe that that's what happened in 1948/1967. If that's true, that's huge. Amen. That's huge. That's the rebirth of the nation of Israel. By the way, only nation in the history of the world to ever cease from being a nation and come back and be a nation again. And by the way, let me say this. It happened, maybe exactly, 2,520 years from the time it ceased to be a nation. I'm talking about a sovereign nation. we all tend to think that Israel was a sovereign nation when Jesus walked the earth because they were in Jerusalem, they had the temple. No, they weren't. They were under Roman rule. Israel lost their sovereignty as a nation in 605 BC when Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar came and took them over. They never got it back. 70 years later, their captivity's over. Some of them went back to their land, but they're still not sovereign. They had a king over them. Even in Jesus' day, they had a Roman appointed King Herod who hated the Jews. He was Jewish, but he hated them. They were under Roman control. Caesar controlled Jerusalem in that day. So it was 2,520 years from 600 BC when Israel became a nation again. Why is that significant? Because the tribulation is 2,520 days long. That's why it's significant. And by the way, you add 70 years to that. After the 70-year captivity, you get the Feast of Purim. Feast of Purim is 70 years from right now. I think that's quite interesting too. 2,520 years from right now, which is very interesting. So these are just some reasons I threw together for you why I think we are the final generation and things are getting ready to change. The Lord's getting ready to come back. It could be that right now that Gabriel is stepping up and whoever's going to blow that trumpet, because Christ is the groom, and he's coming for his bride. Somebody's got to blow that trumpet. It's very possible that up in heaven right now they've got that shofar out and getting it polished up. And because up in heaven they realize, it's not long now. I mean, it's just about ready. He's going to ask any moment to blow that thing. And here we are. The saints are down here. Like nothing's happening. Why are we sitting back not realizing that the end is here? The Muslims are waiting for their guy to come up out of that well, the 12th Imam. They believe their Messiah is coming up out of a well, and they believe it's any time now. The Roman Catholic Church that I grew up in doesn't believe in the rapture. They believe they're going to bring in the kingdom, and they think it's just about here. The Jews are waiting for their Messiah, and they are expecting him any time. The Orthodox Jews over there, they think it's any time now. The Messiah is coming, and he is. That false Messiah is going to become their Messiah. They're going to, and the Catholics are going to bring in the one world Antichrist kingdom. It's all going to happen. And what are the Christians doing? We're the ones with the truth. My goodness! And what are we doing? Are we on the edge of our seat? It's any time now. No, we're sitting back in our rocking chair. Like we've got the rest of eternity to live down here. We got the truth, and he's coming for us, but we're sitting back. We don't realize it's at the door. That's why Jesus preached at them, ye hypocrites. You can see the weather. You can guess what the weather is tomorrow, but ye hypocrites, can you not discern the signs of the times? And I ask you today, can you not see what I'm talking about here? Can you not wake up from your slumber for a few minutes and realize that we are at the tail end of this generation? And any time now, we are the generation our forefathers wished that they could be. Oh, the generation that's alive at the sounding of the trumpet to leave this planet without dying and be raptured into the heavenlies. And we're that generation. And what time's it going to get done? We're going to miss. I got to get on. I can't wait to. That's our generation. My goodness, it's time to wake up. Can you picture the race car driver? 500 laps. He's in that car. It's hot. It's 120 degrees in there. And he has to wear all this fireproof stuff and a helmet. And he's sweating and he's hot. And he's drinking ice water. And he's driving around the track. And it's dangerous. And suddenly he sees that flag that says one more lap. You know what that guy does? Oh, Joe, I'm coming in for a pit stop. I got to get my tires checked. I got one more. No, you've got to be kidding me. This ain't tire changing time. This isn't getting more gas time. This is putting the pedal to the metal and getting ahead of that guy in front of me. I got to win this race. And it's won in that last lap. And that's where we are. We're in the last lap. The sign has already been waving. You guys are it. I'm coming soon. Get ready. And what are we doing? We're at the pit stop. We're having the tires checked. We're getting a new paint job on the car. We want it to look good. Look good. You're not in the race. You're sitting in the pit stop. The checkered flag's getting ready. You're in the pit stop. Well, I'm a little hungry. I got to eat. Listen, We're the generation that your forefathers and people ages ago looked forward to and said, oh, to be that generation that goes in the rapture. Can you imagine it? And we're that generation. But I'm afraid most of us are not ready for it. 3 things you need, and I'm all done. We're going to ask Miss Megan to make her way up here. 3 things you need to be ready for the rapture, right in my little tract that I wrote. And I'm not going to preach them. I'm just going to give you the 3 things, and she's going to sing for us. And maybe the Lord spoke to you this morning. Maybe Sunday school, maybe this service. Maybe you need to take care of one of these 3 things on the list here. Number 1, to be rapture ready, you need to be born again, saved, child of God. It's that simple. You have to be born again. You've got to know you're a sinner. Sometime in your life, you've got to cry out and put your faith in Jesus Christ as your Messiah, your Savior, to save you from your sins. You can't save yourself. You can't turn from all your sins. You can't rewrite it. You can't make it better. Only one thing can save you, turning your faith into Christ to save you from going to hell. Number 2, to be rapture ready. That gets you to heaven, but you're still not rapture ready. To be rapture ready, you need to be right with the Lord. Now, a lot of people are going to heaven at the rapture, but not all of them are ready to meet Him. Oh, they'll go to heaven, and I'm not belittling that. That's wonderful. But a lot of people are going to stand and look Him in the eye and be ashamed. Not one life. Let's see. How's that go? Not one soul with which to greet Him. Not to lay at Jesus' feet. One of them sad songs in the Bible. We're going to die one day, and we're going to go to heaven, and we're going to be raptured. What have you done for Him? Are you going to be right with God? Are you going to be right with God when He comes for you? Or are you going to be backslid, like almost everybody is today? And lastly, to be rapture ready, you've got to be watching for Him. The Bible talks many times about watch and wait. Watch for His coming. Blessed is he who is found watching. There's something about that. The Lord wants us to know that it's the season, and He wants us to be looking and expecting and watching for His return. Do you fit those 3 today? Are you born again? Are you right with the Lord right now? Is there something in your life you'll be ashamed of if the rapture happened tonight? And number 3, are you one of those that are watching for His return? These 2 ladies over here, we had breakfast with them, and they said, we're the kind of people that we don't think about the future much. And someone said, the company's going to do this in 2020. Yeah, okay, well, they're not expecting to be here. They think we're at the end of this thing. I hope they're right. And